German provinces. Combines moved across fields like ships across an ocean of gold, each one harvesting 100 acres per day. The grain elevators they filled could hold more wheat than Germany imported in an entire year. Unteroffizier Franz Weber, a farmer from East Prussia, wrote, "One American farmer with machinery does the work of 100 German farmers." They showed me aerial photographs of the wheat fields, thousands of square miles of grain. They could lose half their harvest and still have more than all of Europe combined. In California's Central Valley, prisoners picked fruit in orchards that stretched beyond the horizon. They watched as perfectly good fruit was discarded for minor blemishes, fruit that would have been treasured in Germany. Entire crops were sometimes plowed under to maintain prices, a concept that caused psychological breakdown among prisoners from hunger-ravaged Germany. They destroyed food to keep prices stable, wrote Gerritor Otto Schultz. Mountains of oranges bulldozed into pits because they had too many. We begged to be allowed to send them to Germany, to our families. The guards were sympathetic, but explained it was impossible. The waste was strategic proof of unlimited resources. June 6, 1944. When news of the Normandy invasion reached the camps, German prisoners experienced their final ideological collapse. The scale of the operation, 6,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, 150,000 men in the first wave, demonstrated American organizational capacity beyond Nazi Germany's wildest dreams. Prisoners at Camp Shelby watched newsreels of the invasion within days. They saw the endless streams of ships, the artificial harbors, the supply system that delivered 15,000 tons daily across open beaches. They watched their homeland being crushed by the very nation they had been told was too weak to fight. Our Friedrich Vontabon wrote, "We knew then that everything was lost, not just the war, but the entire Nazi project. We had challenged the world's greatest industrial power with fairy tales and racial mythology. We sent horses against their trucks, rifles against their automatic weapons, courage against their unlimited resources." Throughout their captivity, German prisoners experienced something that challenged Nazi ideology more than any material wealth: American humanity. Despite propaganda depicting Americans as weak and sentimental, POWs discovered a people secure enough in their strength to show mercy. When Gerrit Hans Miller's son died in the Hamburg bombing, the American camp commander personally delivered the Red Cross message and offered condolences. When Lieutenant Paul Fischer's wife wrote that she was struggling to feed their children, American church groups sent food packages to her in Germany. Enemy civilians in a nation America was actively bombing. They separated the German people from the Nazi regime, wrote Hedman Otto. They said they were fighting Hitler, not Germans. This distinction, which seemed like propaganda, proved genuine. They prepared us to rebuild Germany after the war, not to destroy it. The medical treatment particularly affected prisoners. German doctors worked alongside American medical staff, learning new techniques, using advanced equipment. Prisoners received operations that would have been available only to the elite in Germany. Mental health treatment, virtually unknown in the Wehrmacht, was provided to traumatized soldiers. Dr. Friedrich Bauer wrote, "They treated attempted suicides with counseling, not punishment. Prisoners with mental breakdowns received therapy, not beatings." This humanity toward enemies revealed a strength we never understood, the confidence of true power. By March 1945, the secret re-education program had produced remarkable results. Over 25,000 prisoners had volunteered for democracy courses. The camp newspapers published articles about constitutional government, free markets, and civil rights. Discussion groups debated Germany's future after the war. The program's success exceeded all expectations. Prisoners who had arrived as fanatical Nazis were writing essays about democratic reconstruction. Officers who had sworn oaths to Hitler were planning how to implement American agricultural methods in post-war Germany. "We became missionaries for democracy," admitted Oust Hermann Göring, no relation to the Reich Marshal, in a 1975 interview. "Not through coercion or propaganda, but through observation. We saw it work. We saw ordinary people living better than German aristocracy. We wanted that for Germany." The transformation was so complete that American authorities worried about prisoners being too enthusiastic about American ways. Some requested to stay in America after the war. Others married American women they met through prison correspondence programs. Thousands would eventually immigrate to America in the 1950s. April 1945 brought the final revelation. As American forces liberated concentration camps in Germany, the footage was shown to German PS. Many refused to believe it initially, claiming it was propaganda, but the evidence was overwhelming. Testimony from American soldiers, photographs, newsreels, and eventually letters from Germany confirming the horror. The psychological impact was devastating. Men who had maintained some pride in German honor, despite military defeat, now faced a complete moral collapse of their nation. Everything they had fought for was not just defeated, but evil. Headman Walter Schmidt wrote the most eloquent summary. "We thought we were warriors for a great cause. We discovered we were tools of criminals. We believed we were bringing civilization to inferior peoples. We found that we were the barbarians. The Americans we called weak and decadent showed us what civilization actually meant." As the war ended in May 1945, German PSWs faced repatriation with mixed emotions. They had witnessed an America that contradicted everything they had believed. They had eaten better as prisoners than as soldiers. They had been treated with more dignity by enemies than by their own government. The last months of captivity were spent preparing for return to a destroyed Germany. American authorities provided vocational training, agricultural education, and political instruction. Prisoners learned about the Marshall Plan before it was announced, understanding that America would rebuild. "Rather than punish Germany, they prepared us to rebuild our country," wrote Ost Friedrich von Tauben. "They gave us skills, knowledge, hope. They transformed defeated soldiers into future citizens." This generosity from victors was incomprehensible to minds shaped by Nazi vindictiveness. Between 1945 and 1946, 371,683 German PS were repatriated from American camps. They returned to a Germany divided, destroyed, and destitute, but they brought with them something precious: knowledge of how a democratic industrial society functioned. The German PSWs, who experienced American prosperity, became unwitting agents of transformation in post-war Germany. They had seen industrial efficiency, agricultural productivity, and democratic prosperity. They knew Reconstruction was possible because they had witnessed a society that had achieved it. Many former PS rose to prominence in West Germany's Reconstruction. Hans Krall, prisoner at Camp Shelby, became West German ambassador to the United States. Walter Hallstein, who taught classes at Camp KO, became president of the European Commission. Rudiger von Marr, held at Camp Herne, served as German permanent representative to the United Nations. Edward Ackerman, prisoner at Fort Robinson, became a leader in German agricultural reform. They brought American methods to German industry, American efficiency to German agriculture, and American democratic ideals to German politics. The economic miracle of the 1950s was built partly on knowledge gained in American prison camps. "We learned that prosperity came from freedom, not conquest," Hans Krall wrote in his memoirs. "We saw that democracy created wealth, that diversity brought strength, that treating workers well increased production." These lessons learned as prisoners shaped the new Germany. Historians have called the German P experience in America one of the most successful re-education programs in history. Without coercion, without propaganda, in the traditional sense, American industrial might and democracy converted hardened Nazis into future democratic citizens. The program succeeded because it relied not on words but on observation. Prisoners saw American society functioning at peak efficiency while treating enemies with dignity. They witnessed industrial capacity that made German production look primitive. They experienced a standard of living that exposed Nazi promises as fantasies. Dr. Arnold Kramer, the leading historian of German PS in America, concluded, "America won the propaganda war, not through clever messages, but through sheer reality. Every full meal, every electric light, every working toilet, was an argument against Nazism. The PWS were converted by prosperity." The statistics support this assessment. Of the 371,683 German PS held in America, fewer than 1% attempted escape, with only 2,222 total attempts recorded. Post-war surveys showed that 95% rated their treatment as good or excellent. Most remarkably, thousands maintained correspondence with American families for decades after the war. In 1985, on the 40th anniversary of the war's end, surviving German PWS held a reunion in Austin, Texas. Over 500 former prisoners returned to America, many bringing their families to show them where their transformation had begun. Former Oberreiter Hans V., who had been held at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, and later returned to become a physician in Georgetown, Maine, spoke at the reunion. Life in the camps was a vast improvement. For many of us who had grown up in cold water flats in Germany, we discovered running water, central heating, and abundant food. But more than that, we discovered dignity. Former Stabsfeld Wiebel Kurt Meir, who had worked on farms in Iowa, added, "The farmers treated us not as enemies, but as young men far from home. They shared their meals, their knowledge, sometimes their homes. This humanity from people whose sons were fighting against us. This changed us forever." At the 1985 reunion dinner, former obese Herman Gutz, then 78 years old, delivered the keynote address that captured the essence of the transformation. We came to America as enemies, as Nazis, as believers in a lie. We left as friends, as Democrats, as men who had seen the truth. America showed us that strength comes not from conquest, but from production, not from hatred, but from diversity, not from tyranny, but from freedom. We witnessed the arsenal of democracy at full production. We saw farmers who produced food for the world, workers who built the tools of victory, and citizens who treated enemies with dignity. We learned that America's true weapon was not its bombs or tanks, but its inexhaustible capacity for creation and its unshakable confidence.